even more than the policeman that's going to arrest him.
But you have involved yourself previously with gangs to get to understand them. Do you think that's what's motivating these people? Is it purely just about the money?
Oh, yes. And it's because they have had very little education. A third of young boys, poor boys on free school meals, come out with no qualification whatsoever. I mean, what do we think is going to happen to those boys? I mean, the only way, if they're competitive, ambitious, the only way they're going to get on in life is to take to crime.
I mean, it's not just about the money. I mean, I've lived on a council estate for most of my life, and my book, Getting By, was all about living on a council estate in Nottingham. And the drugs trade there is a real industry. So it is about the money, but it's also about value. Because if you are poor and working class and you live on a council estate, you don't. It's true, the education system's letting you down, the old system's failing you. The way that you find value is through your community and usually what you're wearing and, you know, what you can buy.
Yeah.
Now, you know, if you've got people sort of driving around in brand new cars and, you know, that's how society values you.
But that's the money, isn't it?
Yeah, and
that's
you can't get
money.
that. So for me, I think the industry, the drugs industry, you know, it's multi-layered, it's complicated, it's complex. But I think this war on drugs, which is, you know, we're going to have harsher sentences, etc., etc. The government's been doing, I mean, various governments have been doing this for 40 years now.
But the change with this is that we're now, for once, for the first time, it's not just on supply, but Boris is hitting demand. And it's about time, because if there wasn't the demand from middle-class drug users, and I remember one young boy saying he was desperately keen to get hold of middle-class drug users, because then he said, I'll be sitting on cake for the rest of my life. You know, that's a meal ticket.
These middle-class drug users that sit often working as journalists, pontificating in their outlets.
I wondered when someone was going to make that point tonight.
I'll make that point because they do. They make me laugh, the hypocrisy of them sitting there lecturing people like us what to do with our time and what we should be doing, while simultaneously breaking the law in some of their spare times. Anyway, Ashley, you understand you know, people's behaviour, etc. You know, this whole kind of conversation about, oh, you know, being on a council estate, you want to earn some money, you want to have some value. You know, I just think, oh, come on now, you know that what you're doing is illegal. You know that you can earn money in other legal ways, but you're choosing not to.
Yeah, well, I unfortunately, I would tend to agree that there's a well-known association between involvement in drugs and lack of mainstream opportunities, lack of you know, substandard work is all you have access to. Like, why would you go work at Amazon if you can go make a ton of money by selling drugs?
But everyone's not got access to substandard work, to quote you. I mean, the world is a big place. You can sit in your bedroom and you can work globally using social media and internet connections and all the rest of it. So you're not just restricted to your work opportunities that are on your doorstep.
Yeah, I mean, but statistically, when you have fewer opportunities, you do see, I mean, otherwise you would see like the exact same numbers of people dealing drugs and having drug dependency in every class. You don't see that. It tends to be concentrated in the lower classes. But the thing is that this whole idea of the war on drugs, what it leaves at, and this, oh, we'll have, you know, we'll take away people's passports and we'll take away people's driver's licenses. I'm sorry, if like a jail sentence isn't enough of a deterrent, taking your driver's license away is not going to stop people. In fact, it's going to stop people from reintegrating into society when they actually want to. Let's say you do want to take advantage of those opportunities. You do want to, you know, get a job, you want to go somewhere, get on your bike or whatever. Well, you have to get on your bike because you're not going to have a vehicle. So it actually just pushes people even further outside of society.
But I think these deterrents were for users. That's the big change. It's not just suppliers, it's users. And I think, well, why doesn't Boris go further if he's serious about this? Because when he confiscates, and the police confiscate a drug dealer's phone, on that phone is a whole list of all his precious contacts, his middle-class contacts.
But
well, why not publish those?
But
I mean, why not, you know, name and shame people? Because they won't.
But
I'll
take this seriously, you know, that this is not gimmicky and it's just not another, and we're clamping down on drugs. I'll take this seriously if something happens with this House of Commons report. Yeah. If something actually happens.
What do you want to happen?
Well, you know, there's been, over the last, I don't know, 20 years, there's been lots and lots of headlines about various different ministers and various different MPs and special advisors that have been in drugs parties and, you know, all sorts of parties and using
dealing even stuff.
Yeah, using and dealing. Now, it's very rare that anything actually happens to those stories. They don't really go anywhere. It's kind of like, oh, it's a rumour or whatever. So if this is a serious attempt to look at middle-class drug use, if they were serious, then I'm hoping that something's going to come out.
But like what, though? What do you want them to do? Do you want them to do random drug tests on MPs or what?
Well, I don't know, because that's what they say. That's what they sort of touting out about the rest of society, aren't they? That they're going to be hard on drugs. They're going to start drug testing. When you know, if you are arrested for anything, you will be drug tested, etc., etc. So, you know, if they're going to be that harsh on the rest of society, and if there is substantial evidence that there is drug use in Parliament, then, you know, they don't have to go far.
So what do we reckon to that then, viewers? Do you think that MPs should have random drug tests when they're in their workplace, I guess? I mean, I'd find the results of that fascinating, I've got to say. But, you know, one of the points here, and I think we've just been touching on it there, is the shift in this strategy, because we go on these all of the time, don't we, these kind of war on drugs, etc. Apparently, the difference here will be around treating addiction as a chronic health condition, so putting more money into, a lot more money, into 780 million is the figure that's been touted around, putting that into drug treatment as opposed to just criminalising those people. Many of you are writing in saying, well, why don't we decriminalise drugs then? And if you want to kind of, you know, the kids that you're talking about, the 14-year-olds, all the rest of it, if some of these drugs were legal, then these 14-year-old kids wouldn't be dashing up and down the estates trying to sell them illegally, would they? Ashley, what's your thoughts in terms of treating this more as a health condition? These drugs, not the selling of it, obviously, the taking of it. So being a drug addict, what do you think about making that a health problem as opposed to a criminal problem?
Well, it seems to me that they want to have it both ways with this new approach. You want to, you know, crack down and you have this tough kind of language, war on drugs and being tough on drugs and so on. And then you also want to have this medical kind of framing or this medical way of looking at things where actually it's a health issue and we should be kind and we should give people support and treatment. Well, you can't have it both ways, right? So if you want to make examples of people, you know, name and shame, as much as I would love to see some people get their comeuppance, you know, people who lecture us how to live and so on, well, look at, you know, and name and shame, I don't think that, you know, we all know that these are not the types of people that tend to suffer from policies. The people who get named and shamed are people who have promising futures, and then you take their future away from them. I mean, that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing for rehabilitation. I think we do need to pay attention to the fact that so many people now are dying from drug addiction, from drug toxicity. These are deaths of despair, and they're at an all-time high at the moment. And I think when you know, we're starting to play around with more social distancing measures and possibly, you know, countries are just going right into lockdowns, and you're isolating people, and that is the worst thing you could possibly do for someone with a substance abuse issue. And we've seen in the last few years, we've seen those numbers go up. And I think we need to think about that. That's the only good thing about framing it as a health issue, is that perhaps we can start focusing on the people that are dying instead of, you know, saying I'm going to be tough and so on and make an example of people.
Do both. We should be doing both, because there's the addicts that should be looked after. I agree with you, but then there are the users, kind of middle class users who are inspiring all of this, who are fueling this drug taking.
Yeah, what you're...
But how do you differentiate between these two things, right?
But what there is this middle class part of society that sit, and I mentioned journalists, it's not just journalists, of course, but they sit in their London expensive dinner parties. They'll probably be writing reports about things like gangs and knifing and all the rest of it.
So unkind. That is the second dig.
What's unkind about that? It's true.
Well, I have to admit, I think they take drugs.
I'm not talking about you. I'm not suggesting you're a drug user.
This was me sitting at dinner parties writing reports on drug gangs. Is this me?
No, I would never. I'm not talking about anyone individually. What I'm talking about is there is a collection of people. They often work in public life. They often work in journalism. They do sit at their high-class dinner parties writing articles about drug gangs. They sit there pontificating laws about drugs while simultaneously taking drugs themselves. Of course, I'm not naming any names, and I'm certainly not putting you into that category, but let me just get some feedback from our viewers. People are saying, James is saying, is this a real attempt by the government to address this problem or just more words that will achieve nothing? Stu says, if you want to win the war on drugs, it's very simple. Decriminalise them. Remove the criminal element. Stu says it's not rocket science. Lee says this government, like all the others, have got no chance of fighting the drugs trade because drugs are available in prison. And now he says even looking likely in Parliament. Lots of you are basically saying about decriminalisation. Mike says there's no war against drugs and there never has been. Nothing will change until police take dealers off the streets and jail them. He says there's far too much tolerance for illegal recreational drug selling and taking in the UK. And I mean, lots of you are getting in contact. Dave says if the government is serious, then get compulsory drugs tests implemented immediately into Westminster. Well, there you go. Get in touch and let me know your thoughts on that. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk. But we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be looking at the world. How is it now? How did it used to be? Can you even remember how it used to be, or have we all become so used to a brand new normal? What's your thoughts on that? I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. The next 24 hours sees significant changes take place with our weather. Initially, calm and chilly overnight, but then Storm Barra arrives on Tuesday morning, bringing a spell of disruptive wind and hill snow in some places. Any showers through the evening dying away, many places turning clearer and winds dying down. Under those clear skies with lighter winds, a widespread frost forms across central, northern and eastern parts of the UK. Temperatures in towns and cities down to -1 Celsius, in the countryside even lower than that. But it's the calm ahead of Storm Barra, because this is a rapidly deepening area of low pressure that hits the Republic of Ireland initially during the early hours of Tuesday before sending rain and gales into much of the rest of the UK. So soon enough it turns wet and windy across Wales, southwest England and Northern Ireland. Some hill snowfall, western hills of Northern Ireland as well. That rain and wind move east through the day, followed by blustery showers, and the wind's really picking up. 70 to 80 mile per hour wind gusts in exposed western and eastern parts of the UK, 60 mile per hour wind gusts inland. But as well as the heavy rain and the strong wind, we're going to see a spell of hill snow. Northern England, much of central and southern Scotland, wet snow down to lower levels, but disruptive snow over the hills, blizzards and drifting of snow likely, and over some of the higher routes, 2 to 5 centimetres, and some of the higher spots of Northern England and central southern Scotland, seeing 20 centimetres of snow building up. That's all followed by blustery showers, and Wednesday is another very unsettled day with Barra still centred over the UK. It is filling, so the wind's not quite as strong, but still the potential for gales around South Wales and southwest England, 65 mile per hour wind gusts accompanied by blustery showers. Many places seeing those showers come and go through Wednesday. Further showers, mainly in the east on Thursday, with brighter skies arriving in the west.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, Talking Pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co. Lots of you have been emailing throughout that break saying that you would quite welcome the idea of random drugs testing of MPs. Boris Johnson, if you're listening, there you go, that's a good policy idea for you. You can have that one for free. Helen has been in touch saying basically she doesn't like the suggestion that if you're from a council estate or if you're poor, you would automatically choose crime rather than work. She goes on to say she grew up in a poor working class family. Both of her parents had low paid jobs, but they were decent, hard-working people who might not be in the higher echelons of society, but they can still distinguish between moral behaviour and a life of crime. Don't patronise us, says Helen. I hear you there, Helen. I've got to say, I think being on an estate or just being poor doesn't automatically mean that crime is the answer. And for lots of people, it wouldn't even be a consideration, I'm sure. Anyway, let's move on. New figures from the Office of National Statistics have found that more adults than ever before think that life will never return to the so-called normal of the pre-COVID world. The survey from November found that 16% of adults shared that view. Why is this interesting? Well, because it was a 5% jump from October's poll, and they're the highest figures since the beginning of the pandemic. Will life ever get back to as it was before? And by the way, should it? Lisa?
I think that's what I was going to say is...
Have I nicked your line?
No.
Oh, good,
no,
good.
you don't nicked it. That's what I was going to think. Do we really want it to go back to how it was? If you think pre-2019, you know, there were some pretty bad things happening before the pandemic. Now, I'm not saying that we want to keep how it is. Most people who you speak to now, in fact, all people have had enough of this. They've really, you know, they're sick of it. They want an end to it and they want to go on and live their life. But I think what this report is really tapping into is that lack of hope. And I think the last, you know, what we were talking about before with the sort of drugs situation in the UK is this hopelessness. I think throughout the UK there is a deep hopelessness now, and, you know, media, government, culture and arts, I think we've got to start to focus really on a future that's more hopeful than probably the past was.
Yeah, Ashley, you were just explaining earlier on your job about human behaviours, etc. So I'm interested in this because one of the things that I get frequently concerned about is how we've had kind of small, gradual steps towards things that if you'd have said to someone 2 years ago, for example, you know, you can't go to so-and-so until you scan something on your phone. And even then, you can only go if you've had a medical procedure. You know, we've got countries that are now making it mandatory to be injected with something if you want to participate freely in society. You've got people that are happy for people to be locked down based on their medical status. To me, things that are unfathomable 2 years ago that are now almost become new norms in themselves, and they are norms that many people are happy with.
Yeah, I think, you know, a lot of people will make comparisons to the 20th century, and it's really overstated, you know, of the horrors of the 20th century. But I think if we're even going like a few steps down a path that led us to that, you know, like dehumanizing people, shaming people, separating people from society, scapegoating, you know, I was reading what people in the streets in Austria were saying. They were saying, oh, we'd be out of this if it weren't for these people. I can't understand them. They're basically animals. Like, I mean, if we're going down that path that led us to some pretty bad places in the past, I think that's enough for us to turn around and go back, personally.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's an if about it. I think we are going down that path. I think that I'm seeing more and more headlines that are pitting the vaccinated against the unvaccinated and basically saying, you know, dear clean vaccinated people, all your woes are because of these dirty unvaccinated people. And I do think it's a very slippery slope. And Harriet, it's not even just about that for me. It's just about the way life has changed. And this new normal is upon us. And to many people, it's great.
Well, I think there's good and bad to it. I mean, I think the really depressing thing about it is I don't ever see us feeling carefree again. I mean, one is always worried about something, about whether you're going into a crowd, whether you're going to a party, especially in winter. Flying again. I mean, you know,
I'm
flying,
not
going on holiday, okay, that might be a minor problem compared to many problems that people face. But the idea of just getting on a plane and going somewhere and enjoying yourself, that kind of carefree happiness, I think has gone.
Do you know what I read the other day? Well, actually, it was early today. I read something really depressing about children, small children, toddlers, being on trains and being on buses, pointing out that people are not wearing masks. And they were sort of saying, you know, mummy, that man's not wearing a mask. And I thought that's very depressing. That is really, really depressing that small children have had the whole life experience with people behind masks. I thought that's very, very worrying. Actually.
But my little boy was born during this pandemic. And this is why I've got a lot of resentment, I think is the word, because I can see that my little boy's development is hindered. It is hindered. His speech is kind of, because he has this world where people are concealing their face. He can't see kind of proper interactions between people, and I resent it. And his nursery has a sign on the wall that says wearing a mask is kindness. So then I think, are you trying to teach my kid that if someone comes in here, they've got an exemption or whatever, then they're just not a kind person?
Well, I resent it. I don't agree actually with that, because I think, for instance, people who work in shops, who I have so much respect for. I mean, through the first lockdown, they stayed. I mean, GPs you didn't see, teachers you didn't see, but people who work in shops were there, and there day after day were there for us. And I think it is merely a politeness to wear a mask when you go in the shop, because I want to protect them and I appreciate what they've done for us. So, yes, I think that is being kind. It's me being polite and kind to the shop worker. I don't see what's wrong with that.
My husband's a pizza delivery driver. And he had to work, obviously, the whole way through to bring, you know, food to people. He also does, like, Uber Eats and that kind of thing. And, yeah, he actually appreciates when people don't wear a mask and actually share this kind of humanity with him sometimes. And something happened to me very early on in the pandemic. This older man, I was in the shop with my 5-year-old daughter, 4-year-old at the time, and he came up to me and he took his mask off and he goes down to my daughter's level and he gives her £1 and he says, "You buy whatever candy you want with this or whatever sweets you want with this." And I just thought that was the most humane moment, you know, that supposedly this person we're all trying to protect. He then, you know, breaks this rule.
Choice.
Exactly.
That's his choice.
Yes.
And I respect whatever choice, what a shop wants to do, what shop workers want to do, is their choice. And I will do what they want to do.
Not, though, when it's not there, and this is where I think, this is where I'm coming from. I think, what if it's not your choice? What if your choice is to not wear a mask or you don't, you know, I've got asthma. If I wear a mask for more than 10 minutes, I literally can't breathe.
Well, that's different. That's a medical thing.
But it is. But, you know, if we all think that wearing a mask or staying 2 meters distance from someone or being locked in your house or, you know, whatever it is this week, if that is the way that you're kind and you can't do that, because, you know, if you've got... I know people whose mental health has deteriorated over the last 2 years.
Hugely, yeah.
Them staying away from people at the moment is extremely dangerous for them.
But that's, again, I mean, my parents are... My father's 97, my mother's 95. I mean, their choice is that they want to see their family. They don't... All through lockdown, they wanted to see us. But that is their choice. I tried to be as careful as I could to keep them alive. Because after all, I mean, you're talking about being kind or not kind, whatever. We're talking about life and death here. For some people, it is a death sentence. And I think that is what we have to keep clear in our heads.
I just want to understand what you're saying. You think that if someone doesn't wear a mask, then for some people that's a death sentence?
I think that if some people, like my 97-year-old father, yes. I mean, if someone comes... This is what COVID is about. I mean, are you saying that people haven't died? I mean, maybe
no,
because
of course I wouldn't say that people haven't died. That would be strange because lots of people have died. So of course I'm not going to sit here and say people haven't died.
That's what this is all about. It's all about it's all about protecting people who might get really ill.
Suicide actually over the last 2 years. I know people whose mental health has been deteriorated that much.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, I'm not. I think it's
I know someone that committed suicide last year, and that really shook me up because I thought there's a number of ways that people can die through COVID, and COVID is just one of them. Actually,
but what I'm trying to say, though, is that it's not; these things are not small things. I mean, human beings are social beings.
I totally agree.
We need
but what are you saying? Are you saying we shouldn't have ignored COVID?
No, I can understand.
There is an argument for that.
No, I can understand if at the beginning and during the height, I do recognize, and in fact, I think a certain amount of social distancing combined with a vaccination program is actually a really good way of trying to evolutionarily push this virus into becoming less virulent. It's not for sure, but it's possible. So I recognize that. But what I'm trying to say is that this whole idea of like shaming people, you're a bad person because you want to have a social life, these things are nothing in the face of the right to life. You know, people talk, oh no, there's no point in any rights unless you have the right to life. Well, the right to life is going to be denied to precisely 100% of the population, and it becomes a way to just keep taking away rights because people will always say it's not enough. No, see, people are dying, and they were doing that before COVID too, with lifestyle risks and so on.
I do worry as well. I mean, another norm, a normal is. I keep saying this every week, Michelle, but I haven't seen a doctor for 18 months. Yeah. I haven't seen a GP.
My daughter, I have a 2-year-old at the time during the first lockdown. She hasn't seen a health visitor. Like we had to phone.
Yeah, with mine.
And and I wonder what the blowback of this is going to be in 2 years when there's been millions of people who's not have had any access to general practice.
The one thing I will say is I do think, to your point, Harriet, that there's a lot of people who are genuinely frightened, who believe, like what you've just said, if I see someone in front of me and they don't have a mask on, that person genuinely can kill me. I do believe that there are some people that throughout this have gotten genuinely afraid. And it's not for me to criticise or mock or undermine those people because if they've got a genuine fear, then I actually feel sorry for them. I do. I think that if you're that afraid, how would you leave your house?
If you're old, if you've got underlying medical health conditions, then, I mean, I don't see that's sort of unusual, that you should be afraid.
I think it's awful that people are really afraid. I do. I think it's awful that they're afraid.
Are you saying they shouldn't be afraid? Or do you think they're exaggerating?
I'm saying that I think that there's probably, a healthy fear around all sicknesses and all illnesses. Nobody wants to get ill purposefully. But I also think that there's got to be a balance with humanity, with who we are, with the way that we socially interact, with how people's mental health and physical health have been deteriorating. I am so worried over the next few years where people's mental and physical health is going to end up because of 2 to 3 years of this.
And also 2 to 3 years of telling young people as well, oh, you're going to kill your grandmother if you don't follow rules. You're a bad person for wanting formative experiences in your teens. That's not good for young people either. And people, oh geez, why are young people so anxious? But you keep telling them that you're going to, all of these risks, be aware of all of these risks, and of course they're anxious.
Well, they've all been enjoying themselves like crazy for the last sort of 9 months or something.
Do you know what they have? I don't think they have. I think when we start thinking about this, it will normal come back. I think the fear and, the sort of heavy-handedness, because I think that the governments have been heavy-handed, even in this country. When you start thinking, you see Austrian police checking people's details. That frightens me.
It does. Well, I see more that I see people in Australia basically, calling them camps is a bit extreme, but being sent off to a different place because they've got this infection. I see protesters that don't want to be curtailed in this way getting fired with cannons and plastic bullets, and I'm terrified by all of this. And I do find it quite challenging because I know, to Harriet's point, that there are some people who genuinely are terrified by that, and that's got to be respected. And then it's a balance, because you also do have to respect the fact that there are other people that are not as terrified as the people
they should be allowed to go out. But I think what's interesting, you're bringing up all these examples of other countries, which I agree is terrifying. But what's interesting about COVID is that every country has done what their population wants.
Oh, I don't know. I think
and that we do not want these things, you know, examples of Australia, we don't want this here, and it's not happened here.
Well, I'm gonna have to wrap this up here, because we could do a whole show on this. But I do think you make an interesting point, though, when you say that most countries have done what their population want. And I think a lot of people will have that opinion. And one of the reasons that people will think that many governments are doing what their country wants is because there's been very little reporting and accurate reporting about just how many protests have taken place globally, by the way, the size and sheer enormity of many protests that are against all of these kind of restrictions and responses. But the media, many parts of the media at least, have done a very good job indeed at not reporting that. So people would indeed be of the impression that everybody wants this. Anyway, your views are flying in. Do keep them coming. I'm going to take a quick break, and when I come back, I wonder, do you have teens, I guess, younger children, and do you worry about them online? The reason that I ask is because unsolicited sexual images are becoming dangerously normalised online, apparently. So I'll have that and more after the break.
Coming up on Dan Wootton Tonight is Protect the NHS, one of the most dangerous slogans of all time. Positive Professor Carol Sikora weighs in. One of the most outspoken figures from the world of politics and showbiz, Christine Hamilton, joins my superstar panel alongside social commentator Esther Kraku, the conservative commentator Albie Amankona, plus Carol Malone sounds off in Uncancelled. GB News star Neil Oliver gives his take on the state of the world, and I'll preview the race for Christmas #1 with one of its contenders, S-Club star Joe O'Meara. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Monday to Thursday on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs and Co. I mean, I have to say that last topic has got you all talking, lots of you emailing in and quite divided on it, I must say. Some of you are still afraid and don't really want things to go back to normal, and lots of you have had enough and want it to go back to normal. And Owen has contacted us, and I have to say this one sentence sums up a lot for me. Owen says, fear will not keep you alive, but it will stop you living. I have to agree with you there, Owen, I do. Graham has been in touch and said, Dear Michelle, we've become addicted to your programme. It's now part of our evening's entertainment. How sad is that? He says. Well, Graham, that's not sad at all. That's amazing. You said that you recommend us to your friends. Well, we appreciate that, and it's not sad. It's great. You should celebrate that. That's what I say. My mum's addicted to the programme as well. She watches it all the time, so hello to my mum. 3 in 4 girls have been sent unsolicited sexual images, according to a new report. More than 50% of boys and girls who receive unwanted sexual content online did nothing about it. 25% of them told a friend, just 2% reported it to school authorities, and 5% to their parents. 17% reported it to social media companies. Now, we talk often, don't we, about young people and being online and how safe is it to be online. Ashley, I mean, I do find it a little bit peculiar, I've got to say, why a random grown man would send an unsolicited picture to a girl that they don't know, who hasn't requested this image. I get them sometimes. So that's what, when I say get in touch and tell me what's on your mind, I do have to admit that I get a certain group of people sending me random pictures to the GB Views email box.
Don't give people ideas.
What drives that kind of behaviour, and how can we keep young girls in particular safe from this stuff?
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, it's a logical outcome of making so many of our real-life interactions so problematic. So, you know, how to approach somebody. You don't really approach somebody out of the blue anymore. I mean, I think when I was younger, a long, long time ago, you know, most of my relationships were started by somebody catcalling me in the street. And that's how I would, oh, hello, and I'd go and meet somebody that way. Now you wouldn't do that. Now that is actually considered quite threatening. And so online, there's this idea that you can vet people beforehand, that it's supposed to be much safer. And so you push so many of our interactions online, especially, of course, with lockdown. You know, people are going to continue to have sexual relationships, and those relationships did go online.
Yeah, but 12-year-old girls.
That's part of it. Now, older teenagers will carry on sexual relationships, and unfortunately, that can go terribly wrong. In terms of younger people, that's a completely different issue, I think. I think it needs, you know, social media companies and websites need to do a better vetting process of people's ages. Unfortunately, it's a massive issue.
Yeah, and Lisa, what about, maybe I'm a little bit old-fashioned, but I think what are parents doing in this scenario? Because if my 12-year-old had a telephone, I would be checking. What is he up to?
I think it's, you know what, I am so glad I don't have a teenager now.
True.
Because I don't know how I would cope with it. I don't know, because the internet now, you know, it's more than just something that you do in your life. It's almost all your life. So, you know, and young people are on it all the time. They know they've got much more knowledge about it than I have. It would really worry me, actually, having a young girl.
But would you check your young teenager's phone?
I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to, because I remember being a kid and having a diary. And the thought that of my mum, I mean, she did actually used to read it, but the thought that but she did use, you know, I wouldn't want to invade someone's privacy. But I just wanted to say, I don't know, perhaps it's just where I used to live, but we used to get a lot of blokes in Macs.
Did you know?
We did too.
Who used to do lots of flashing.
Yes.
You know, these people who were sort of doing online flashing, are they the same old, you know, dirty old men that we've always had? But they've just got a new way to do it.
But I think you raise an interesting point there about privacy, because, you know, I would want to give my child some privacy, but the difference to me anyway about a diary versus your online activity is no one can hurt you through your diary. If someone's, I don't know, no one's going to be grooming you via a paper diary, but they could be via your Instagram account or anything like that?
Well, my children are, in their 20s, so thank goodness I've missed out on this. But I was really shocked to discover what is going on with 12, 13-year-olds, and this is boys as well as girls, and that boys are getting their first, 9 or 10, they're getting their first idea of sex from watching hard porn, bestiality. That is their first idea of sex. And so they are then apparently sort of trying out these ideas on these poor girls. And the girls are put in this dreadful position where if you're a girl, you fall in love with a boy, then you might have a little fumble and a kiss, and the next day it's all over social media. I mean, I think it is horrific what is going on with our 14 and 15-year-olds. And I don't know what the answer is. I mean, I actually am beginning to think that social media is actually like alcohol and drugs, that perhaps you should only have full access to the internet when you've got to a certain age. Because there is so much damage is being done to these young people.
What age then? You can do that now. I don't think.
Well, I mean, let's discuss it.
But
I mean,
here's the thing.
18,
I
don't know.
Why is this happening? It's because, young people, they're not really able to go out anymore and have the kind of autonomy that they would have had. Like, I talked to my husband, and he's like, as usual, you say, oh, kids these days and so on. And he said, yeah, but when I was, 12, 13 years old, I was busy outside playing. I was playing football. I was playing pickup with my friends. Now, I mean, we're afraid of like stranger danger. We're afraid to let our kids go out. Obviously, recently you couldn't. It wasn't even allowed to go out. And so your life moved online. And parents, you can't do right here, because you can monitor their use, but you can't monitor it all the time.
Well, I think it's even more
and
dangerous
then you're a helicopter,
online.
And you're a helicopter
you've got
parent,
this false sense of security as a parent that your child's upstairs in their bedroom. But what is happening? They're showing that 12-year-old girls sending bits of themselves naked to older men.
But how, and I think this is the question, is when being online now is such a massive part of everybody's life. I mean, this, I couldn't even park my car outside here without being online. Everything, you've got to have a smartphone, you do everything online. And when so much of our life is online, children, that's their life now. You see sort of 2-year-olds with smartphones
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be their life. I mean, we're adults. We can decide what we want to do, and our children don't have to be like that. I mean, I remember I was involved in a school. Catherine Bulbel-Singh was setting up the school in Brent, and the first year of students, she was addressing the parents, and she was explaining to the kids that she wasn't allowing any phones to be used in school. And if she caught them, she was confiscating them for the whole of the summer holidays. So we all gasped and thought, oh my God, the parents are going to stand up and walk out and leave. No, the parents started clapping. They were so relieved that someone was helping them take a stand, because every child was saying, oh, why won't you let me use it? All my friends are. And finally, an adult was saying, no, this has to be used.
But also, I've got to say, we're going to move on in a second, but I do wonder what drives some of these new apps. Like, why are companies setting up apps where you can message and then with a nanosecond, the message is all gone and there's no trace? And what possible reason would you have to communicate with someone, and then within a nanosecond, that kind of audit trail has gone? It's very bizarre to me. Anyway, I want to just show one last thing before I do close for the night. I saw this, and it just made me chuckle, quite frankly. What's your thoughts on statues, like monuments to you? Would you want one of those? Would you be quite proud and happy if someone did a statue of you to recognise some of your achievements? What then if I said that statue was not like any other? It wasn't, I don't know, out of bronze or gold or anything, but it was made from drain pipes. Yes. You heard me right. This is an interesting statue, I've got to say. It's for Tyson Fury. It's been made out of drain pipes, apparently, to reflect the essence of the punch, which, according to the artist, is a key moment in boxing. You don't say the essence of the punch is a key moment in boxing. Ladies, what's your thoughts? Would you like a drain pipe statue?
Yeah, I like it.
Would you?
I like it. I love Tyson Fury and I love the statue.
I like the statue, yeah. I think, I bet people in Morecambe a laugh when they see that. I bet it cheers them up.
And it's a punch. It is a punch.
Ashley, a drainpipe statue, yes, no?
No,
very
I would
quickly?
like a statue made of pure gold. I think that's...
I know, I'm a bit like that, actually, yes. So if anyone's watching and wants to make a statue for me, I'm like, Ashley, I'll have a gold one, if you don't mind.
Delivered to my doorstep.
Yes, well, there you go. Your husband's a delivery guy. He could deliver it with one of his pizzas. There you go. I've sorted it all out. Right, that is it. That is all we have got time for tonight. We shall be back exactly the same time tomorrow at 6 o'clock until 7 o'clock. But for now, Harriet, Ashley, Lisa, thank you for your company. And thank you as well for yours. Anything you want us to be talking about on this show, do get in touch. And in the meantime, have yourselves a very good evening, and I'll see you tomorrow.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. The next 24 hours sees significant changes take place with our weather. Initially, calm and chilly overnight, but then Storm Barra arrives on Tuesday morning, bringing a spell of disruptive wind and hill snow in some places. Any showers through the evening dying away, many places turning clearer and winds dying down. Under those clear skies with lighter winds, a widespread frost forms across central, northern and eastern parts of the UK. Temperatures in towns and cities down to -1 Celsius, in the countryside even lower than that. But it's the calm ahead of Storm Barra, because this is a rapidly deepening area of low pressure that